time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Brad Henderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello and welcome back, my favorite Mavericks. I'm Jeanette Anderson, host of the Maturepreneur podcast. And today with me, I have Brad Henderson, coming to us from Toronto. I'm currently in lovely Victoria, but who knows where I'll be by the time you listen to this. Today, we're going to be talking about how to go from rockstar dreams to CEO realities, unlocking your consistency edge through any career shift. Now, those of you who are my getting clear on what's next, what do I do to make my next transition, perhaps within your career or out of your career into entrepreneurship or something else, this is your show. We're going to be talking to Brad about what it takes to actually make those leaps. So welcome, Brad. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So we're going to, as always, I'll read you his official bio, because we got to get in those credibility things, but then we're going to ask him to tell us something about us that people wouldn't guess. And Brad, you get bonus points for making it really salacious and juicy, just so you know. Brad Henderson is a leadership coach and author of The Consistency Effect. He believes leadership is too important to be left to chance. Drawing on 4 decades as a CEO and senior executive across real estate, telecommunications, technology, and manufacturing, Brad serves as a trusted, silent partner, providing candid insights and unvarnished guidance that leaders need to navigate their challenges and blind spots. Damn blind spots. What makes his coaching different? He doesn't just advise, he has lived it. He has made the tough decisions, led the difficult conversations, and built high-performing teams that transformed organizations. When leaders receive the mentorship they deserve, they create organizations that elevate people and change the world. Awesome. So that is a little bit about you, the kind of official bio, but tell us something that maybe even your friends don't know.
I guess my close friends would know this, but probably most people wouldn't, was that early on in my late teens, I decided I wanted to be a rock star. So, passionate about drumming, passionate about music, and much to my parents' disdain, gave up school and went on the road for a couple of years trying to be a rock star. And what came about that was that it flamed out in a spectacular way. And what I decided was that just was not going to work for me. So 3 years later, I went back to university, now as a mature student, 3 years more senior than everyone around me. And all of my friends, their life had moved on to the point where they were buying cars, houses, starting families. And so I felt incredibly behind. And I wasn't the greatest student in the first place. And so even as a mature student in university, found it very overwhelming. But that's really where I think I found my footing around what I wanted to do and what some of my passions were, because I was able to take that passion for music and turn it into a passion for school first and then business next.
Cool. That's a very good story. I think it's funny that you're a mature student at, what were you, 23, 24, something like that?
Right. Well, remember, I felt like I'd come through the school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
All of these optimistic students, a couple of years my junior, seemed to be many years my junior in terms of experience.
Yeah, no doubt. So have you ever gone back to drumming? Have you ever been part of a band since then?
So I've been able to pursue that passion as a part-time endeavor.
Good.
I'll tell one other quick story, which is that in the early 2000s, I was the president of a company. We sold it to TELUS. TELUS, major telecommunications company in Canada, and TELUS had a corporate band. And I was able to play in that band and tour all across Canada at a very lavish budget to play in front of TELUS team members that in many cases would number in the hundreds, if not thousands of people. And so I got to live a part of my dream while I was in business. It was a unique situation.
Awesome. What a great way to manifest that. That's a great story. Okay, so tell me what, you've been in leadership for a long time, and what you really focus on is consistency. Why is that so important?
When I look at my career, and I've had numerous roles in 7 different industries, and part of that has always been a passion for growth and for new experiences, and being at the steep end of the learning curve has always been something very exciting for me. And I've always been passionate about businesses. So whatever business you're in, I'm interested in that business and how it operates. So that passion led me to move from company to company, from industry to industry. And what served me in all of those situations was a consistent approach to how I would achieve my objectives. And I'll just back up a second. And what I was able to make my career at doing is being a turnaround CEO. So somebody brought into a situation to help turn around the results of the organization. Mm-hmm. And when people would say to me, well, what kind of company would you like to work for? And I said, well, the kind of company I would love to work for is one that's highly profitable, has got a great culture, and a great prospect going forward. But the challenge was none of those companies were looking for a new CEO. So guess what? The companies looking for a new CEO were ones that were struggling with revenue, struggling with a toxic culture, struggling with strategies that were misaligned. Mm-hmm. So the reason why I backed up with that is to say that my role, my expertise was to get into these environments, quickly understand the drivers, and then to be able to bring around the change that not only the investors or the founder of the company wanted, but in reality, so did the employees. But they just needed somebody to liberate them, to help them to do what they knew needed to be done, but they didn't do in that place. Right. So along the way, what sort of occurred to me is that there is this consistent effect that you need to help other people to develop. And we all know consistency is a good thing to do. I mean, that's as obvious as it can be. But why, if we know that that's so important, why do we not do it all the time? Right. And it turns out that there are psychological, neurological, situational, and structural reasons that actually are acting against us being consistent. So in putting out the consistency effect, that is something that I explored along with helping people understand my history and how I struggled with some of these things.
Okay, what were those for again? Psychological, neurological, structural, and?
Cultural.
Cultural. Okay, I wrote environmental, but I knew that wasn't right. Okay, cultural. All right, great. I want to talk about those 4 too, but and really, the big question is, we do know, and why aren't we consistent? Before we go there, let's find out a little bit more about you and your journey. So tell me about your why. Why do you do this work, or why do you do what you do? What's your purpose in life, Brad?
I mean, you highlighted a little bit of it in the introduction, and that is that, I really believe that leadership is too important to be left to chance. Mm-hmm. And that within all of us lies the ability to have significant impact, and that leaders have the ability to have significant impact on their people and on their environment and ultimately on the world.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, what it's missing is some catalyst to take it from, normal or dormant or even sort of ordinary to extraordinary. And my path of leadership in the early days without any guidance, and then twinned with my experience in coaching, has given me the passion to want to be that catalyst, to try and help people to become the best version of themselves, whether in leadership or in a more personal way.
And why does that matter to you so much? So what you want to do is be the catalyst for them to make that leap or that growth. Why does that matter to you so much?
Because I think because I didn't have it when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
and that I see it now, and particularly having written the book, with clarity in a 2025 perspective, and that I can help these people move through some of the same challenges that I had more quickly or more comfortably, and to move to an environment where they can achieve some of the objectives that I achieved, some of the outcomes that I achieved much faster.
Okay. And so those of you who are listening who may be thinking about what can I move into, what's next for me, Brad said something really important, and what is often a driver behind many coaches, consultants, counselors, various different kinds of service providers, is that they didn't have the support that they wanted. And so they want to be the source of that solution for others so that those others don't have to go through what they went through. So if you're wondering, what could I do? What would I want to do? Think about that. Think about when you longed for something that you didn't have, that wasn't there to help you do and have what you wanted. And perhaps you can be the source of that for others. That's a great way to get some clarity. So your why is basically really being the catalyst so that people can be the contribution that they're here to be in a way that's easier for them to access and step into. Sorry. Let's talk a little bit about your journey. Tell me a bit about because I'm always interested in the be first and foremost, then the do, then the have. One of the best piece of advice I've ever gotten was from a man named Nido Cobain, and I asked him the difference between a transformational speech and an educational one. And this goes for consulting, it goes for programs, it goes for coaching, everything. He said, if it's transformational, I need to figure out who they need, or if it's educational, I need to figure out what they need to do. If it's transformational, I need to figure out who they need to be in order to do that. So I'm always interested in the being. Who do you need to be? And so tell me a bit about your transformation from employee to executive. What did you need to shift to make that leap? Who did you need to become in order to step into leadership?
I think the real transition is that typically when someone enjoys success in their early part of their career, it's because they were the subject matter expert or the domain expert in a certain area. And what I figured out fairly early on is that in order to progress, I needed to be able to command or to orchestrate people who knew much more about what the domain or the subject matter expert than I did. So my job was not trying to compete with them, to be smarter than them, because two things. One, you can't do that with every domain as you rise up in through leadership. Two, if you do that, you're going to repel talent. You're going to push talent away, or you're not going to allow talent to develop. So in that journey, from being a individual contributor to a team leader, to a manager, to a director, VP, and so on up the line, you had to shed that feeling and that habit of being the smartest person in the room, for lack of a better term, to being someone who could ask incredibly thoughtful questions.
Mhm.
Someone who could understand the essence of all of the different subject matter expertise that you were getting as an input, and be the synthesizer of that information, be the person who could draw that information together in a way that would enable the mission of the organization, and be that person that could help all of those other domain experts see the value in their fellow team members, to the point where they were saying, yes, I understand how I figure and how I interact with those other people, and how all of this becomes a part of the greater whole. And doing that in new environments where you're not the subject matter expert, and where you're trying to do all of this very quickly because there's some fundamental problem with the company, usually losing money, losing employees, or both, losing customers, or all three, is an equal challenge, because you have to do it much faster than might otherwise be the case.
So what I heard there is that part of your personal and professional growth was really going from knowing the answers and being the answer provider, to actually consciously not knowing and being curious and asking better questions, which is always, well, I think is often more powerful than having answers, is asking better questions. And then being a synthesizer of that information, so that you can give it back out to people in a way that's actionable, understandable, etc. So moving into conscious incompetence in areas so that you can grow, which I think is really important. And people don't recognize that there isn't any growth in our comfort zone. It's only outside of our comfort zone where we can actually be something different. My motto in life is that, or part of it is that I want to live out to my edges, which to me means that I'm always outside my comfort zone because my edges are always being pushed out. And then the second piece that you mentioned in there was really being able to see the value in others. So part of that leadership and that growth is how bringing that curiosity to, who is this person? What's their value? What value do they provide? And how do I bring that out? Is a big part of that as well. What was the transition for you like from leader, executive, being in a corporate culture, having all sorts of support and resources, et cetera, to being an entrepreneur? What made you decide to make the leap? So what was the decision when you finally pulled the plug and said, okay, I'm going to go do this?
To be honest, it was really at the, I would say, encouragement, if not insistence, of my wife.
Okay.
She had, I guess, observed me in different roles throughout my life, and had said, you have had such a powerful impact on the people that have worked with you. Mm-hmm. You should be an executive coach. And when she first brought it up, I thought, that doesn't sound like, boy, that sounds like a lot of work. But like a lot of things, she would just let it percolate and keep coming back to it. And eventually I said, well, yeah, actually, it sounds like a lot of fun.
But you thought it was your idea by that point.
Yeah, that's right. She was a master at that. But the point is that when I looked at it again, I thought to myself, I have this passion for developing people. I have this passion for trying to actually help people be better than me. Mm-hmm. And the vision is that if I had an organization where everybody was able to do everything that I can do and better, that I would go and figure out what's next. I would then take the time, energy, and effort and move to a higher level, and we would all rise up together. So I had that passion already. And when I decided to go into coaching, it was more of a natural step in terms of the coaching than I thought. But what was a very unnatural step is not having the hot and cold running resources to help me and support me in all of that. Now, what has helped me immensely is artificial intelligence, and I become an orchestra leader of various agentic AI models to help me with everything from sales, marketing, and collateral material, and all kinds of different things. And that's been a wonderful learning environment and journey for me. But the doing everything yourself has been an interesting progress, interesting transition. So,
Oh, I really want to talk to you about your agents and that process too. But let's try and stay on track a little bit here and talk about
Sure.
you went into coaching. Tell us what your business model is. So how do you make money?
So it's very simple, and quite honestly, money is not the priority. I believe that what I deliver adds value, and therefore there's a cost to it. But my passion is really around helping the next generation of leaders. And my tagline is, I think you should make new mistakes. There's no reason that you should make all of the known mistakes.
Yeah.
And it was actually Roosevelt's wife that said, learn from other people's mistakes because you can't live long enough to make them all yourself. And that's a passion that I've lived by in terms of my own learning, but it's also something that I'm trying to help the younger generation with.
Mm-hmm.
In my book, I try to highlight all of the different things that happened to me that were mistakes. They were things that I now would have done completely differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that many of those things, clearly by this time, this is 20, 30 more years later, had already been figured out. But what I've been actually shocked at is how many people are going through those exact same mistakes that I made. And so my hope, my prayer is that I help them to identify what's happening to them and help them to either change courses or move through that challenge more quickly than I was able to without that level of coaching, that why, if you
Right. So how did you, so when did you start your practice? How long ago?
It was 8 months ago.
Oh, okay. So relatively new. Okay. And what's your primary offering? Is it one-to-one coaching with executives? Is it corporate programs? What do you sell?
The people that I think my coaching resonates most with are first-time CEOs. Mm-hmm. So somebody who's risen up through the organization is now at the top of the ladder. And what I find with that particular individual is that they find it very isolating. Mm-hmm. They're moving from being, in many cases, a peer to now being the superior. They don't have the same support group to talk to. They need somebody to help them with that. Right. The other is founders, people that have developed their company from the garage and that is now a going concern. They may not have had the opportunity to work at a big company, like a bank, like a telco, like others, to see the models for how a company grows and scales. And again, they're feeling very isolated because who do they talk to about their challenges? And then the third area is the fast-growing executives. So people that have gone up through the ranks are now at a point where they're, again, feeling very isolated. They don't have as many coaches or mentors inside of the company to help them because in some cases, there are people that are competing for the same role that they are. So they're now looking for, what do I need to do to move up the ladder? And as importantly, what are the skills and capabilities I need to develop to be seen in the big company as a logical candidate for the next progression or the next promotion?
So what's your learning curve been around in terms of sales and marketing and specifically self-promotion? Because for a lot of people who come out of corporate and out of positional authority, so, inherent in your position is your authority, who then have to go back and establish authority and credibility and so forth and sell themselves to get clients, that can be a really challenging transition. How was it for you?
It continues to be a journey of learning and of discovery and of maturation, for lack of a better term. Right. What I was highly surprised at in some respects, but maybe in retrospect shouldn't have been, is that when I announced that I was coaching on LinkedIn and that sort of thing, I had a number of people who used to work for me at different companies reach out to me and say, hey, congratulations, that's awesome. When can we talk? Mm. And these people had gone on to be promoted, move to different levels, move to different companies, and they became my clients. They became my first clients. And it's because they knew, liked, and trusted me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the biggest barrier for coaching is to feel that confidence in someone,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to say, okay, I can be my authentic self with that person. I can be vulnerable. And that, as you know, because in your coaching business, when they're at that level, they'll be much more open to your ideas and suggestions. So the next level is then to move to people you don't know.
Right.
And there's a progress. There's a process to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And the book was very deliberately written about my life. And there's some very personal things in there, as well as celebrating successes and commiserating over losses, but some personal things in there because I wanted to share them to help people understand who I am.
Yeah.
But also to try and take the lessons about consistency from everything, because we all show up to our work, to our families, to our friends. We all show up as a person, and you don't separate them out. And something that is adversely affecting you in one area of your life is translating over, whether you know it, like it, or want it, into other areas of your life. And so the coaching is not just about business. It's a holistic approach to that executive, that leader, because if you don't solve for that problem, you're not solving for the entire.
Yeah. How we do anything is really truly how we do everything. I literally just recorded another podcast earlier today. It was talking about sex and intimacy and its relationship to business and money and power. And they're integrally connected. When we have limitations in one area, we're going to have limitations in another. And we're an interconnected being. We can't compartmentalize as much as we may try. So it sounds like you're still in the process of kind of sorting out and working out the how to get new clients, how to market yourself. You've had some support and leverage in terms of the launch because of previous clients. What advice would you have for people who are just newly going into perhaps a consultancy or creating some kind of business? What would you say you wish you had known 8 months ago that you now know?
I'm not sure that you can totally fast forward the movie because I think it is a journey. But I would certainly say that getting clarity around what your ideal client looks like, what are the challenges that your ideal client is dealing with. Because early on in the process, I had assumptions. And the assumptions were based on the people that I'd coached, the experiences that I'd had. And they were decent assumptions, but I took my own advice and I hired a coach to help me market myself. Because I think one of the things, and it's a point you brought up earlier, is that as executives and former executives, we haven't necessarily had to sell ourselves. We've been selling our company, we've been selling, the products and services that we deliver, but not, who are you and what do you do and how do you do it? Yeah. Well, you can't do that unless you truly understand your clients. So part of the process that my coach helped me with is said, rather than assuming, go out and ask strangers, like not, strangers, like people that you don't know, what the business problems are. And it was very enlightening because it did reinforce some of the beliefs that I had, but there were a whole series of other things that came to light that helped me to focus more towards those challenges. And the other question that I asked them is okay, if you could architect a perfect leadership development program, what would that look like? Which isn't just about executive or leadership coaching. It's what would that program look like? And so, yes, some of it had online learning, and some of it might have had interaction with certain AI models.
Mhm.
But then when they would get to the executive coaching part of it, they would then lay out what it was that it would be important for them to see in that program that would make them want to work with one individual versus another. So
Yeah.
that process, it is not quick.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, it's incredibly painful
Yeah.
because you think you know, and you want to know, and you want to get to that answer. But it's actually going through that process that helps you. And the company that is helping me with that, is very effective at doing it. And they know that it's painful. And so they help them try and support you through it. But at the same time, they know that it's a process. And until you get through it, you're not going to come out the other side better.
Yeah, it's an exercise I have all of my clients do as well because it's so informative, but it also serves a couple of other really important purposes. It gives you that understanding of what the market is, because a lot of times what ends up happening is the expert is at the top of the mountain talking about the view from the top. When this is working, here's this great view. But they're talking to people who are down in the forest who can't see that view. And we forget we have to go down to the forest to get them and bring them up the mountain. We can't just talk about the view that they can't see. And so when you do that interview process and get that feedback, we get to hear what they're thinking down in the forest, rather than what we're thinking up at the top of the mountain, because that's what we tend to put on our website. That's a common mistake many entrepreneurs, first-time entrepreneurs make, is they speak to it from where they're at versus where their prospect is at. So you get their language, but it's also a brilliant way to build a warm list, because when you've asked that question, then you can go back to them and say, okay, that program you said you wanted? Here it is. And here's how it can help you go from where you are to where you want to go. So it's a highly valuable thing to do, and I'm glad your coach has you doing that. And so tell me a little bit more about, let's come back to your topic of consistency. Tell me a little bit more about those 4 areas of psychological, I lost them. They're in here somewhere. Psychological, cultural, structural, and neurological. There. Okay. I knew they were here. So what's that about?
Yeah. Let me just take one tiny step backwards. So when I started writing the book, one of the things that became very apparent to me is that my rhetoric that I used as an executive, I would say was, let's say, 75% bulletproof. It was good, and it was certainly good enough as an executive. But as I wrote the book, that 25% haunted me. And it was like, this just doesn't connect. And the biggest part of it was, why, if everyone knows that consistency is so important and all agree, and we actually all have sessions and seminars and everything else about it, do people not follow through on it? Well, it turns out that there are at least 4 different categories of things that are roadblocks, if not speed bumps, to that happening. So, first of all, is psychological. When we announce the big program, this is what we're going to do, and this is going to revolutionize and totally transform our organization, there's a lot of energy, a lot of fanfare, a lot of excitement that everyone in the organization has about it. And because it's new and novel, psychologically, we are drawn to it. By definition and by extension, anything that happens every day becomes somewhat monotonous and doesn't have the same attraction. So everyone is drawn to that big announcement, that big program. And it's natural. But what ends up happening is those things peter out because there aren't the fanfares, there aren't the rallies, there aren't the big executive presentations, and it peters out. And the neurological part of it is that this new and novel, this exciting part of it actually triggers dopamine. and it creates that sense of excitement in your world. And so those are attractions. But when that dopamine is gone, then you're left with the drudgery of doing things repetitively. The cultural part of it is that we still celebrate firefighters more than fire marshals. So the person that swoops in and saves that project that's gone off the rails at the last minute by pulling all-nighters and working over the weekends and whatever else, that person is celebrated more than the person who prevented the tragedy in the first place. So from a cultural perspective, we've got it a bit backwards. Now add to that the structural part of it, which is in performance reviews. If you're the person who saved that project, if you're the person who came in and snatched victory out of the jaws of defeat, then you're going to be recognized for remuneration, bonuses, potentially even promotion, as opposed to the person who didn't cause the forest fire or the crisis to happen in the first place. So all of these component pieces, individually as well as collectively, are the speed bumps to consistency. So when people say, what we need in this corporation is more consistency, and why aren't people being more consistent? Unless you understand some of these dynamics and then put in place ways to eliminate those roadblocks and ways to counterbalance some of the adverse effects of the lack of dopamine along the way, then you're not going to get the consistency that you're looking for.
Well, let's talk about, so it's great awareness around the things that stop us. And I love your, people love, saviors and celebrate them more than those who keep us from needing to be saved. I think that's a great distinction, firefighter, fire marshal. So you also mentioned that, we don't get that dopamine hit, and it can become drudgery and very challenging. So how do we create consistency, especially for those who tend to be, I call them scanners versus delvers. We used to be called Renaissance people. Now we're called flaky, but I see us as Renaissance people, which are, multi-passionate, lots of interest, love to start things, don't necessarily like to finish them. Consistency is a real challenge for those of us who are like that. For delvers, those are the people who like to do one thing at a time, finish things, go deep, very narrow focus. If you tell them to multitask, their butt goes tight. If you tell a scanner to pick one thing and focus on it or be consistent, their butt goes tight. So how do we help those people with consistency? Mostly I'm asking for me. I pretty much suck at it. It's like create a habit. Yeah. So even just something as little as I want to get more consistent on LinkedIn, setting up a habit of doing a 10-minute check-in every morning. Sounds simple, never freaking happens. Okay, so how do we support creating consistency?
Wow, there's an enormous amount to unpack there, and let me add a few things, and then I'm going to stop to allow you to make it a conversation. So I think one of the things you talked about earlier is that there's different people, different personalities, right? Some scanners, as you talked about, some delvers, some people that are good at it. Creating a team where you have those complementary skills, and call it limitations, is a part of the solution. For the scanners, it is trying to create systems that support the consistency, but also recognize their need for short-term celebration, short-term dopamine hits. So the better that you can put those dopamine hits, the celebrations, into a comparatively long-term process, such as trying to be consistent on LinkedIn, the more that you're going to help those people to be consistent, or said differently, you're going to architect an environment where success is inevitable as opposed to being left to chance. So it isn't simple, it isn't easy, but it's not impossible to do those things. But if you have people and you ask them to iterate and ideate, if you like, around what can we do to make this 10-month project broken down into individual component parts where we can celebrate on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, you'll get to a place where that will help. If you can find systems that make it easier for someone who finds it drudgerous to post every day on LinkedIn, that can help them. If you can find some joy in helping somebody to post on LinkedIn, like a support group that sends 20 messages and says, "That was fantastic, Jeanette, you did a great job," and that means so much to me, because they may actually think that, but they don't do it. And all you have to do is trigger them to do it. And it would make a huge difference in your world, I'm sure. Right? And it would make you want to post more, because that would be the dopamine hit. That would be the celebration that you're missing right now. I'm exaggerating, but you know.
No, you're not. Yeah. And I actually am in a posting group like that for that reason. It's a structure that requires, and I loved your line about architect an environment that ensures success. Someone told me a long time ago that structure creates freedom. I hated it. I hated hearing that. I still kind of whinge when I say it, but I now know with some wisdom that that's actually absolutely true. And for those of us that are, somewhat oppositionally defiant to structure and constraint, there can be a tremendous amount of liberation with putting structure in place that helps us, systems that create a lack of having to do it over and over and over again, and a structure like accountability that supports us in doing what we want to do when we can't just do it from willpower on our own. Accountability really helps. That's why having a coach is a really great idea. What are some other keys to architecting that environment that ensures success?
I think leadership authenticity is an incredibly important piece, because I've been in environments where everyone needs to be consistent except the leader. And that's a non-starter.
Yeah.
So if you're putting in place systems, processes, and procedures that hold everyone else accountable, but then you say, well, I can't do that, I won't do that, I'm not that, because it is never going to work. Yeah. If you're tolerant of people in your organization that are allowed not to do that, that's another way that you're going to destroy that effort. So building a culture of consistency, a culture that recognizes consistency as important, celebrates it as being a valid and passionate pursuit, rather than being, oh my God, here we go again. We got to do this. We got to do that. We got to here's the action registry. Here's the whatever system that's designed to try and help the organization be in place. If it's celebrated as opposed to considered as considered with disdain, then you're going to help the organization see the things you're putting in place. Help the scanners in particular to say, yes, this is something that I want to do. This is something that I feel important. And I can buy into it because the way it's architected appeals to my sensibilities.
Right. Well, which makes a lot of sense. And I heard in what you were saying about the have-tos and the shoulds and so forth, part of the shift that really supports me is to shift it from a should or a have-to a choose to or a get to. Just even in the framing, it gives me a little more freedom. And I am one of those people who loves creating systems for other people to use, and have, been rebellious about using my own. But what I know is, as I grow my business and I have a VA team right now and so forth, they break down in terms of their ability to be effective. Because I tend to be someone who wants people to be hands off. Don't micromanage me. For that matter, don't manage me. Tell me what my objectives are and get out of the way. And so I assume other people are that way, and they're not. And so I've had to learn how to be more hands-on, using the systems, and telling my team to give me hell if I'm not using the systems, because I then become the bottleneck and I become a constraint to their success. So enrolling them in constantly enrolling me and using my own systems has been helpful. What's a couple of other things that you would say in terms of entrepreneurial consistency that you've had to create for yourself to be more successful? What are some things that you've set up in your own practice that when you do it consistently has really been beneficial?
I think when you work for a large organization, you can probably do dozens of things and, hope that they all work out, but probably accept that many of them won't. Mm-hmm. As an entrepreneur, you have to really focus on a small number of things because you can't afford multiple failures or non-successes, if we want to be kinder and gentle. And one of the lines that I repeat to myself and I try to help others to see, and it's grammatically awkward, so I'm going to tell that right up front.
Okay.
But it's done almost intentional because it actually makes you think. If you're not inherently anxious about what you're not doing, you're not focused enough.
Okay. About what you're not doing. I'm writing it down. What you're not doing. You're not focusing.
You're not focused enough.
Okay. You're not focused enough. Yes, you're right. It's awkward and it makes total sense. Because it's the what we're not doing that we know we need to be doing that is the priority that we tend to avoid in the minutiae or the distractions and so forth. Well, I'll stop saying we and I'll say I, because we is a nice way to be able to put it out there and keep it in theory. So if you're not inherently anxious about what you're not doing, you're not focused enough. Did I get it right?
Right. And just to expand on that, typically, as a corporation, you've got dozens of things coming at you. You have to make a decision about what ones you're going to spend, your organization is going to spend time, energy, and effort on. As an individual, you have a limited amount of bandwidth. Mm-hmm. And so somebody says, you should be doing public speaking. You should be on podcasts. You should be writing a book. You should be out networking with all your friends and relatives. You should be, there's dozens and dozens of things that are coming at you. And every one of them sounds like a very decent idea. Mm. So you have to be relentless and very focused and recognize that there are certain things that you're not going to be doing and that you're going to be inherently anxious about them. And you have to become comfortable with them. Because if you're not, then you're going to gravitate to it. Oh, I better go do some of this today. I better do some marketing today. I better do 10 more posts on LinkedIn. And you quickly end up becoming that person who is so scattered that nothing gets done with any great degree of perfection, and everything is kind of falling between the cracks. Right. So one of the greatest challenges I find, even with myself, knowing this and being my own coach, which is questionable sometimes, is to say, I keep saying to myself, all of these things, what is it that I'm not going to do and I'm going to be okay with it? Because I need to become reconciled with it. I need to feel comfortable that I'm not doing that, but I'm not doing it consciously. And when I tell some people sometimes, because they all come out and, oh, you should be doing public speaking, you should be doing this, you should be giving books away, go and do book signings and all this stuff. They say, you know what, I've decided that this is the most important part of what I'm doing, and that these things are another work stream. I see the value in them, but they're another work stream that's going to be stress me out and take away from my health and my family and everything else. And so I'm focused on this, and this is what I'm doing. And a lot of the times they go, yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were you trying to get me to do it in the first one?
Exactly. And that, ladies and gentlemen, go back and listen to this part again. I've been coaching entrepreneurs on growing their business for the better part of 40 years now. Business startup, business turnaround, and have grown 4 of my own businesses. And that is often the number one challenge. And it's also my biggest challenge as well, is especially for those of us who are multi-passionate and scanners and so forth, is that prioritization. Now, it may not be the pick one thing, because that can, often be too narrow, but it is focus. And what is the thing that I can do now, or a few things that will inherently move me forward more, and let me be anxious about leaving those other 12 things over there, because I just won't do them well if I try and do them all at once. They won't happen. And so why set myself up for failure? So I think until that sinks down into your bones, listen to Brad again and again say that, because it is probably the most important piece of advice for being successful as an entrepreneur that you're going to get. So thank you for that. Speaking of that, how can people get in touch with you and find out more about you?
So my website is www.consistency-edge.com. So www.consistency-edge.com. I'm on LinkedIn at Brad J. Henderson. And my book is available on Amazon.ca. It's called The Consistency Effect. How to turn reliable results into how to turn reliable actions into remarkable results.
Great subtitle. So consistency-edge or -edge.com. And there's many things that I'd still love to ask you and talk to you about, because this is a fascinating conversation. I'll get you to leave us with one last piece of advice in just a second. And ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to ask you is, if you are looking to get clear about what your next steps are, if you're looking to figure out, okay, what am I passionate about now? What is my purpose now that I'm not who I've been, perhaps my whole life, might not be the CEO anymore. So what's possible? Where am I going? What do I want my next chapter to look like? What is my vision for the future? There's a phenomenon that's happening now of the most entrepreneurs coming into the work for business world ever in history. And it's a demographic full of boomers and Gen Xers, because we are #not done by a long shot, either because we can't afford to retire or we're choosing not to. And so, or both. And so if you're looking to define, who am I now? What do I want now? And how can I monetize that? How can I turn that into my way of creating impact and income? Then please reach out to me, DM me. We have workshops coming up that will support you with that. We have programs, we have coaching. Do not try and struggle and do this on your own. One of the things Brad said earlier is that, without that support, without that external structure of accountability, we end up making old mistakes instead of new mistakes, which was also a brilliant quote I wrote down. And my goal for you is for you to make new mistakes, not the old ones that I can support you in saving the time, money, and effort on. So please do reach out and get a coach if you're transitioning and you want to tap into how to turn that into perhaps a consulting practice, or just figuring out what you want and need. Reach out to a coach like Brad. If you're looking for, how do I monetize that? What's my business model going to be, etc. Call me. Find someone that will push you outside your comfort zone, that will help you get to that edge that Brad was talking about, so that you can be the person that you want to be. That you're asking those questions and moving into that new way of growing, so that you can create that new chapter in your life. So in other words, go get support. Damn it. Okay. That's the short version of this. So, Brett, what's one last thing you'd like to leave everybody with?
So, I mean, first of all, let me congratulate you on your business, because I think it's an awesome niche that you've put out. It's a huge niche, so it's not really even that a niche. And I think what you're contributing to that demographic is huge and needed. And I think you do it incredibly well. And we've had some chances to chat before this podcast. I would also compliment you on being an awesome podcast host.
Thank you.
You ask great questions. You get the best out of your guests.
Awesome.
And I think you should be commended for that. I think I'll go back to the quote that I said earlier, and that is, learn from other people's experiences and from their mistakes, because you can't live long enough to make them all yourself. And life is too short, and particularly at this end of the life, I'm looking to learn from other people and to give back and share with other people.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate the compliment, but also I really appreciate your contribution here today and in the world in general. I love that you are also not done by a long shot. So, ladies and gentlemen, take this to heart, listen to it again, and please also share this with those that you know who may be wondering what's next for them. Thanks for listening. Have a bodacious week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.